My name is Zoe Clark. I'm Senior Self-Management Programme Officer here at NASS. And so we run these Facebook Live sessions all about different aspects of managing your axial SpA to give you a little bit more information about the condition and how to manage the impact that it has on your life. So yeah, this session is going to be focusing on work in axial SpA. Do pop your questions in the comments as we go through. I'll share some slides just to give a bit more info, and what we'll do is after the session I'll pop a link in the video description so that you can download the slides afterwards. You've got all the links to the further resources that I mentioned, so don't worry about taking notes or anything like that. Hi Jane, thanks for joining. Glad you've got sunshine in Bristol. Send it over the east if you can. Wonderful. And before I get started, if you haven't heard of the Facebook Lives before and you'd like to be kept up to date on when they're happening, then do sign up to our e-news. I'll pop a link in the video comments after the session. You'll hear all the latest news from NASS, including all the upcoming dates for the Facebook Lives and different topics. Wonderful. So I think to start with, I'll share the slides and I'll go through a short presentation, but do let me know if you have any questions as we go through. So to start with, obviously it's a really big topic, talking about working with axial SpA, and everyone's going to have very varied experiences. So today I'm just going to be giving an overview of what it's like to work with axial SpA, some of the barriers you may face. I'll go through your rights as well so that you know the kind of support you can access as well. So, I mean, firstly, I don't really need to explain why work is important. Obviously, it's really important, you know, financially, for our mental health and self-esteem, and also for our kind of life in terms of family and friends and so on. So really we can go into more detail in terms of how axial SpA can affect your work life. So because axial SpA affects everyone differently, it is going to impact work life differently, and particularly depending on the job that someone does, you know, whether someone's at a desk all day, their axial SpA is going to impact differently to someone who's in a really active job or driving lots. But the most common issues that we come across people facing with work and with managing their condition is the impact that the pain and joint stiffness can have, particularly in the mornings, and particularly if people work you know, early in the morning and have those early starts. That joint pain and joint stiffness can have a really big impact. If you're sitting and standing in one place, often people describe that the pain and stiffness builds up during this time. That can be a real difficulty. And obviously if your axial SpA is causing any mobility impairments, or if you experience a lot of fatigue and reduced stamina associated with the condition. And of course, those pesky AS flares, if they happen, particularly if they're very unpredictable or you don't get much warning, that can have a huge impact on your work, no matter what your role is and what your job is. Now, if you're making a decision about work, it's really important to take your time, look through all the different options and get lots of advice and support. As I said at the beginning of the session, I'll signpost to some resources and some organisations that can really help you make those decisions about work. But it's especially important to take your time if you're still waiting for your formal diagnosis, or if you're newly diagnosed as well. And particularly if you're starting new treatments or you're switching treatments, it can be difficult to predict how you're going to respond to these. So it's well worth waiting to make a decision about your work until you've given those a chance to take effect and seen what impact it can have. And especially if you're having a particularly bad flare, it can be the time when you're questioning things most and you're worrying about work and whether you can continue or need to change and so on. But it's really worth waiting until that flare up has eased to start making these decisions, so you can look at things on a whole. Now, your rights, it's really important to understand these so that you can access the support that you may need through working. So the Equality Act is essentially, it is there to protect you. So people with axial SpA, most people will be covered by the Equality Act. So with the Equality Act, you're considered to be disabled if you have a physical impairment that has a substantial, which means more than minor or trivial, and long term, which means more than 12 months, negative effect on your ability to do daily activities. So looking at your daily activities rather than, you know, your employment related activities. It's really important to understand if you're covered by this. So if you're not sure, you can actually contact the Equality and Human Rights Commission to speak to them there. And because of this, it means it's against the law for employers to discriminate against you because of your disability. In Northern Ireland as well, you are protected by the Disabilities Discrimination Act, and we've linked to the DDA there, where you can also find out if you're going to be covered by this. When recruiting staff, an employer can make some inquiries about your health or disability, but there are only very specific situations where this applies. So if you, they can ask about your health or disability to decide if you can carry out a task that's an essential part of the role that you're applying for. To help find out if you may need any adjustments in the recruitment or the interview stages, and to give you those reasonable adjustments during the selection process. If they want to actively increase the number of disabled people that they employ, they are allowed to then ask someone if they have a disability. And also if they need to know for the purposes of national security checks. So it's quite a limited list as to when they can ask questions when they are recruiting new staff. Now, in terms of starting a new job, your employer will be allowed to ask health-related questions once you've been offered a new job. And you do have a duty to tell your employer about a health condition if it might present a health and safety risk to yourself or other work colleagues. And we do say that signing a declaration saying that you don't have a health condition, when you do, it may make things difficult later on if you are then seeking support for that health condition through work. But when someone is disabled, an employer has to make reasonable adjustments. And we do recommend joining a union early on before any issues have arisen, if they ever do, just so that you have that support and the backup in future if you need it. So in terms of reasonable adjustments, these will vary depending on your needs, the nature of your work, the size and location of your employer, and how long you've worked for your employer as well. But an employer has to make these reasonable adjustments to avoid you being put at a disadvantage compared to non-disabled people in the organisation. And really, it's important to stress that actually making these adjustments so that you can work well without being limited, it is actually in the interest of both you and your employer as well, in order to help keep you keep you in work and enable you to work at your best as well. So when you're looking at reasonable adjustments, it's really important to assess how your condition affects you individually. And you can also get specialist organisations support, such as Access to Work, to look at what reasonable adjustments might be helpful for you. And I've just put together a few examples of workplace adjustments. I mean, these are, as I said, they're going to vary depending on where you work, what your role is, and the size of the organisation as well. But some places are able to offer a workplace assessment with an occupational therapist to help you identify any adjustments that might be helpful. That could include providing specialist equipment, such as an adapted chair or desk, and also giving short, regular breaks so you can get up and move around and stretch, particularly if you're in a desk-based job. Flexible working hours, as I mentioned right at the beginning, if you experience a lot of pain and joint stiffness in the morning, it may well be that having those flexible working hours helps you work around those hours when your axial SpA most affects you, gives you time to get up and get loosened before starting work. And hybrid working, particularly now we're all forced into hybrid working through COVID, it's opening up a lot more opportunities for people to continue these. And you are able to reallocate duties if you're finding them difficult, and also providing opportunities for you to retrain for a different role. Now, we do recommend, if you are having any difficulty with these reasonable adjustments, or if you want any advice or individual support, it's well worth getting advice from Citizens Advice, and we've linked to that there. So the slides will be available to download after the session, so you can just follow the link to Citizens Advice to find your local one. And they're able to give you more information in terms of your rights, reasonable adjustments that might be helpful, and they can support you through that as well. Now, there are going to be occasions when you need time off work, and so it's really important to understand your rights around this. So if you're having time off due to illness and you're employed and off for 4 working days or more in a row, you earn more than £118 a week, you'll be entitled to the statutory sick pay. So this is money paid by employers to employees who are away from work because they're sick, and it's the minimum amount you can be paid when you're off work because you're sick. It's paid by your employer for up to 28 weeks. Although it is worth checking your contract of employment, because it might give you extra rights for more sick pay than this, which we term contractual sick pay, and you can see on your contract what you'll be entitled to for that, or speaking to your HR department as well. And then time off for medical appointments. So your employer may well allow time off for medical appointments, but they're not legally required to do so unless it's actually in your contract of employment. So your employer may ask that instead of taking time off, you do these visits outside of work hours, you take holiday leave, or you catch up on the time later, like time off in lieu. Again, just check your contract to see what you're entitled to. If you're covered under the Equality Act, your Axial SpA, and your employer doesn't let you have time off medical appointments, it is connected to your Axial SpA and your disability, so they could potentially be breaking the law. So it's worth getting specific advice on that from the Citizens Advice or an organisation called Turn to Us as well. And if you're not covered by the Equality Act, it's still worth bearing in mind that your employer shouldn't treat you differently from other employees. So, for example, if they allow some employees to have time off medical appointments and not others, that shouldn't happen. So again, get advice if that is happening. Now, talking about your Axial SpA at work, this is going to be very difficult for some people, and also it's going to vary depending on the amount of time you've had your condition, how much it affects you, the relationship you have with your employer and your employees, and how much impact it has on your work as well. So again, it is very individual. And it's important as well to recognise that to a lot of people, and for a lot of people with Axial SpA, it is an invisible condition. It can be really difficult from looking at us to tell whether we are in a lot of pain, or if we're having a bad day, if we've got a lot of fatigue or brain fog. It can be very difficult. So it is hard sometimes for people to understand that. As I said, Axial SpA does affect everyone differently. And yeah, when it's not easily visible to other people, then it can help to actually discuss with your family, your friends and your work colleagues the impact the Axial SpA has, so they can help understand. And it's really common to have those feelings of isolation as well because of the symptoms of Axial SpA, and it's particularly common sort of in the beginning stages of the condition too. So I think it's important to allow yourself time if you are newly diagnosed to get your head around the condition before approaching those conversations. But in terms of talking to your employer specifically, you're not legally obliged to tell your employer you have Axial SpA unless it presents a health and safety risk for your role. But we do say that you can't mislead your employer, and you do have a duty to answer medical questions honestly. And it is important to get the right advice and support at an early stage. So again, organisations like the Citizens Advice and Turn to Us can really help with that, but also your union as well. And we have an employer's guide that you can download from the website, which gives a lot more in-depth information. And it also has a section of the guide that you can give to your employer so that they can understand a little bit more about your condition and how it impacts you. And of course, if you experience flare-ups and then periods where your symptoms are reduced, it's well worth trying to have these conversations with your employer on a day when you're not flaring, because it's just a little bit easier, you're a little bit more clear-headed, and it can be less emotionally draining to be explaining your condition if your symptoms aren't too severe that day. And remember, in terms of talking to your employer, to be covered by the Equality Act, your employer must be aware of your disability. So that is an important fact there. I did mention earlier the importance of joining a union if you have one for your job. And it's well worth, when you're having these conversations with your employer, approaching your union representative for support in those conversations. They can also clarify your rights and help you with discussing those rights with your employer. So if you're not already a union member, do consider joining. And some unions don't provide support or legal advice for pre-existing problems. So it's worth joining them before any problems arise. And hopefully no problems do, but it's well worth joining beforehand. Now, talking to colleagues, it can be difficult to decide on the right time to talk to your colleagues. And it depends, as I said, on the severity of your Axial SpA and your personal feelings as well. Some people do prefer to be upfront as soon as they're diagnosed, while others continue working for many years before they feel the need to tell their colleagues. But whatever you decide, bear in mind it is hard for people to understand your problems if you don't discuss them. And many people tell us that they put off these conversations until their Axial SpA is causing a lot of problems for them. But actually having a conversation a little earlier on and getting that support and that empathy from colleagues can make a big difference in managing the condition at work. Now, I've put together a few top tips in terms of staying well at work. Again, these are very general because it will depend on what your job is and how your condition is managed in general. But if you're office-based, you can ask for a workstation assessment. So you'll be advised on how to minimise your discomfort at your workstation, and if necessary, they'll be able to provide special equipment such as rising desks, adjustable chairs, and so on. If you do work at a desk like I do, then it's really helpful to set a reminder to take a stretch break. It can be so easy to get stuck into some work and then realise that an hour or two has gone by and you've not moved from your chair, and then you end up feeling really stiff and painful either during the day or at the end of the day. So actually having a reminder or time blocked out in your calendar to do those stretches is really important. And on our website, we do have some information on some desk stretches. So I'll pop the link in the comments after the session, so you can have a post-it note there handy just to remind you to do a few stretches, even at your desk. Can be really helpful in reducing your discomfort through the day. If you're in the office, then walking to talk to colleagues rather than emailing can be helpful. And even encouraging people to have standing or walking meetings. For anyone, even without Axial SpA, getting a few more steps in the day can be really beneficial for your health. And it is worth trying a standing desk, particularly if your workplace can provide one. And lots of people report that having desks that are easy to move up and down, so they can spend some time seated, sometimes standing, and they're able to change their position frequently, is really helpful. In terms of getting to work on your commute, looking at if you can walk or ride part of the way, so cycling if you can, depending on your commute. And if possible, taking the stairs rather than the lift is a really easy way to get a few more steps into the day. And doing stretches when you're waiting. So for example, on your coffee break, while you're waiting for the kettle to boil, do a few standing stretches just to loosen up, and that can make things a lot more comfortable through the day. Again, the importance of blocking time out in your calendar. So having a proper lunch break, blocking the time out in your calendar and using that to get moving, get away from your screen, go outside for a walk if you can, if it's good weather as well. And just, use that as a chance to get moving and reduce the impact that working at a desk can have. Whereas in an active job, definitely using your breaks as rest times can be really helpful. Maybe doing some stretches to help stretch out any tight areas depending on what you've been doing. And it's really important if you are on your feet a lot at work, wearing good supportive shoes with a nice cushioned sole is really beneficial. It helps just cushion and reduce the impact on your joints. And if you are standing in one place, then even considering a cushioned or gel mat that you can stand on, that can really help reduce the impact and make things a lot more comfortable. In terms of managing Axial SpA as well, of course, it's really important to make sure that you're under the care of a rheumatologist and you're receiving those annual reviews with them. Some rheumatology departments are able to refer you directly to an occupational therapist or a rheumatology physiotherapist, so you can get that individual advice. And the occupational therapist can offer advice specifically on changes that you can make or tools you can use to make your work life more comfortable. And of course, I would say join your local NASS branch or one of our online branches, but it is a really great way to help you manage your Axial SpA with the exercise sessions led by qualified physiotherapists, but also it provides that space where you're meeting other people with the condition, particularly if it's an in-person branch and you're meeting people who live locally. They can provide that support, that peer network, and also give advice to each other as well. They really are invaluable. And as I said, I've linked to lots of resources and support for the session, so you'll be able to download the slides this afternoon once I put them on our website, and I'll pop the link in the comments once it has gone live so you can download them and get the easy links to all these places for support. So these in particular, access to work, I referred to in terms of getting help to pay for the practical support so you can do your job. ACAS and systems advice are really great in terms of giving you free independent advice. And the Equality and Human Rights Commission, gov.uk and Northern Ireland Direct as well, are really great at providing information about your rights, especially in terms of if you're covered by the Equality Act. And also it's really important to look into deciding if you're entitled to benefits as well. There are organisations such as Turn to Us that have benefits calculators available. Here at NASS, we're not able to give advice on whether you would be qualified to benefits, but my colleague Gary is available to help if you do decide to apply to any of these. So he's really helped so many people in terms of applying for benefits or for support by writing supporting impact letters for your employer or for those benefits applications. It just gives a little bit more information about what the condition is, how it impacts you personally, and the impact that it has on your work life. Particularly because Axial SpA is quite poorly understood generally. We are working to improve that, but in the meantime, having that impact letter can really give a bit more information and more support, and it just helps you explain your condition better as well. So I've popped Gary's email address up there, so do get in touch with him if you're needing that impact letter, but do visit Turn to Us if you're wanting advice on what you could be entitled to. And then for NASS members, we do have guides from benefits and work that we can send out to members, and we've also got a video previously that we've done on benefits with Gary too. So that was my whistle-stop tour to working with Axial SpA. So I've got plenty of time for questions now. So I'll stop sharing the PowerPoint there. Do let me know in the comments if you have any questions. Oh, I've got a few coming in. Let's see. Thank you everyone for joining. Hi Jane, thanks for joining. Let's see. So Dennis says, when I started to work in care back in 2002, because of my AS, I had to sign a disclaimer saying that I could not hold the company responsible for any back injury I may occur. I never took a day off work relating to my AS. Gosh, I've not heard of that before in terms of signing a disclaimer. I don't know what they would say about that now, but that's amazing that you didn't have any time off because of your AS. I suppose in a way having an active job can be really helpful, certainly depending on your fatigue levels. And Joe's shared that he's been really helpful, been really lucky with understanding employers since his diagnosis. They've helped him with adjustments and so on as well. And yeah, I can certainly say I probably work for the most understanding employer, having Axial SpA myself. Yeah, and absolutely, Joe shares the most difficult piece has been the mental side and the exhaustive brain fog and ability to think at work as well. And it's impossible for people to know, but some managers have been good to have a discussion and be open. And this has been them helping me notice the signs of when I'm struggling in that way, and then what they can do to help me. That's fantastic. It's really good that they've been really supportive with that. I think particularly the brain fog and the fatigue is quite a difficult thing to discuss and to explain to someone. But it's great that once you've explained that, they've been able to support you through it. Yeah, and walking to and from the office is really good, both physically and yeah, in terms of mentally as well. It just gives you that time to prepare for the day ahead and then to switch off from your work day as well. So Lee works in the supermarket on his feet all day. So absolutely, in terms of that can be really difficult. It's that balancing act, because obviously being active is good for Axial SpA, but then there's that tipping point where it can become, painful if you're too active, and the impact of fatigue as well. So definitely the things that I said about wearing really supportive shoes with good cushioning under the soles, so it reduces the impact that it has on your body, and speaking to your employer and making sure that you've got those rest breaks in. So it may well be that rather than having sort of one long break in the middle of your shift, you'd rather break that down into smaller breaks so you get that time to rest, stretch, and just have that bit of time off just to recover a little bit as well. And looking at your working pattern, some people find that they prefer to work a few days and then have a few days off, whereas some people would rather do it where it alternates, so that then they've got a rest break in between 1 or 2 days of work. Obviously, it depends on your situation as well, but yeah, definitely worth speaking to systems advice if you're looking at changing the way that you're working and you're not sure what you're entitled to. And Anya's commented, really helpful to hear you say all this out loud, Zoe. It's far too easy to get stuck in a rut and just carry on when there are things I could do to improve pain, etc. Hearing you say it is making me rethink my working patterns. Absolutely, it's really easy just to get stuck into that day-to-day routine, and yeah, just try and get through each day and each week. But it's really good every now and then just to take a step back, look at how your condition is on the whole, how your work is impacting it, and whether any changes would be helpful. And then absolutely getting in contact with those different organisations who can help with that as well. And I'm always happy if someone's struggling in terms of managing their pain, I'm always happy for you to drop me an email or give me a call on the helpline, and we can chat through what you're currently doing in terms of managing your pain, if there's anything else I can suggest. That's really a real shame. Dennis has shared that he'd never had any empathy from the employer, and apart from the constant niggling pain, which made me very tired. My ESR at the time was in the high 80s. Gosh, so lots of information going on. I mean, hopefully you've got a bit more understanding now. And Jane's shared she's gone part-time as a teacher to manage her Axial SpA, and accepted needing to focus on classroom teaching and not now looking to take on anything else. Management have been great and very supportive, but would be interested in strategies for explaining Axial SpA people tell me about their arthritis in the fingers or how tired they are. It's not a competition, but really feel they haven't understood. Absolutely. Unfortunately, we do hear that quite a lot, where I think people mean well because they're trying to empathize and trying to say that they understand, but absolutely being able to explain that axial SpA is a full body inflammatory condition. It's very different to arthritis in a local area. Obviously, and in terms of the full body impacts, like the fatigue, the brain fog, the muscle soreness and things like that, it is a very different condition. So I would definitely say, Jane, and anyone else who sort of have understanding employees and employers, but want to have a little bit more information, do download our guide for employers. I'll pop the link in the comments shortly, because that just gives a little bit more information about the condition. And it's a little bit easier being able to give them something to read, something that's independent, explains the condition fully. And then you can always have a follow-up conversation saying, you know, for me in particular, this is the main symptoms I experience, or this is how they fluctuate. And then thinking of different ways they can support you in that. So like going part-time, or having help with particular things, or having rest breaks. But yeah, getting that understanding of the condition as the foundation, and then being able to talk about how it impacts you personally, can really help with those conversations. And hi Mandy, thanks for joining us from Ballyclare, Northern Ireland. Right, so I think I've covered all the questions there and shared everyone's comments. Thank you so much for getting involved and sharing your experiences. We do have time if we have any more questions, so please do pop them in there. But as I said, all the slides will be available to download. For anyone who's just recently joined, you'll be able to watch back on the whole video shortly once we've finished the live session, and you'll be able to watch it on YouTube as well. So while I'm allowing time for everyone to add in any more questions, I'll just let you know that our next session is going to be on Wednesday, the 13th of April at 1 p.m. I'll be joined by Dems, who is a health and wellbeing coach, and we'll be doing an introduction to health and wellbeing coaching. And excitingly as well, she'll be giving us info of a giveaway that she's doing. So there'll be a chance for viewers to win a free health and wellbeing coaching session with her. So hopefully lots of you will be able to join us for that, or again, catch up on the replay. We pop all of these videos on our My AS My Life webpage. So if you've not visited that before, it's well worth heading to the website, My AS My Life, and looking at all the resources that we've built up there. We've got lots of things in terms of helping you manage your condition and understand the condition and how it can be treated as well. Wonderful. So yeah, no more comments coming in at the moment. If you have any questions, do feel free to email me, zoe@nass.co.uk. And yeah, visit the other organisations that I've signposted for support as well with your work and employment. But thank you everyone so much for joining and for sharing your experiences as well. I've really enjoyed it, and hopefully you've all found it helpful. So I'll see you all in a couple of weeks. Have a good break, everyone. Take care.